Hi guys, welcome to an instructive game which featured an extreme display of understanding of the end game. Charles Lewis escaped the pressure in the middle game. He played the black pieces against Alexander McDonnell, who attacked with the white pieces. Alexander decided to play pawn to e4, c5 by Lewis Charles, knight to f3. This featured the Sicilian defense. After knight to c6, d4 followed, we see the open Sicilian. In this position, pawn takes on d4, takes on d4, e5 comes up, attacking that knight. Knight takes the knight on c6, pawn takes the knight on c6. In a position like this, you don't want to run into this variation where pawn takes the knight. You open this particular d file. Queen takes queen, king takes, gives white a little advantage because black king has lost the right to castle. After pawn took the knight on c6, bishop to c4, activating a minor piece, developing it to an active square, then giving it room to access more squares, targeting one of the weak square in black's camp, and at the same time vacating this particular square so that the king can be castled faster to the king side. Knight to f6 comes up, attacking the pawn, developing a minor piece. Bishop to g5. This move pins the knight to the queen. If knight takes the pawn, bishop takes the queen. That is the idea. So, Lewis Charles found a continuation with bishop to e7, unpinning the knight and giving knight the mobility to move. Here, the knight can actually take the pawn if unattended to. That is why Alexander decided to go with queen to e2, defending that pawn. d5 comes up. d5 attacks this pawn and also attack the bishop. What to do? This is where Alexander employed an idea with bishop takes the knight on f6 first. Bishop takes the bishop on f6. Bishop back to b3. In this position, black decides to castle, keeping the king away from the center. White also castled. We have seen a nice display of understanding of the opening. In this position, we can say we have converted from the opening to the middle game. Since some pieces have been traded, minor pieces have been developed. In few moves ahead, the rooks will be connected for both white and black. How did black continue from here? Black went on to play a5. What is the idea behind a5? The idea behind a5 is simple, such that observe the light square bishop for white. The white square bishop has lesser number of squares to run to for safety if black successfully push pawn to a4. So pawn to a4 is a threat in this position. Since the bishop cannot come to this square c4 for safety, he will be forced, or the bishop will be forced to take this pawn just to gain material, or take the pawn in the center. And here, after the exchange, black will be up some point. So, what did Alexander do after spotting this concept? Alexander strategically saved the bishop. Pawn takes on d5, pawn takes on d5. The threat is still coming, pawn to a4. So, he decided to play rook to d1 first. Rook to d1 creates a room for a threat, such that if this pawn in the center is not attended to, white has increased the attack on this pawn. The pawn is attacked twice by a rook and a bishop, such that if bishop captures, the rook defends the bishop. So, black must act wisely. We need to take note that the pawn is also pinned to the queen. So, a move like pawn to c4 is also coming, trying to test Charles' knowledge. What did Charles do? First of all, Charles moved the pawn away from that danger square. c4 came up right away, thinking Charles will fall for an idea with en passant, taking the pawn so that rook can take the queen. However, Lewis Charles displayed an understanding with this middle game by playing queen to b6, removing the queen from an extra attack so to avoid any future tension. If the queen was still on this square, Alexander might utilize that idea by playing knight because the pawn cannot take. So, after queen to b6, bishop to c2, Bishop to c2. What is the idea behind bishop to c2? Bishop to c2 first of all blocks the defend of this poisoned pawn. The pawn is not a free pawn because if black takes the pawn, then it falls into a trap after bishop sacrifice taking this pawn on h7. If the king takes, queen takes queen. You can agree with me that even an upcoming chess player would know how to finish the game from here with these strong materials on the board for white. Another concept with bishop moving back to c2 is to join forces with the queen. If the queen can get a square like this, the bishop and the queen will mount pressure on h7, threatening checkmate. So, what to do? We should not forget that there's also a square like this too, e4. The queen can come to e4 and support the bishop to mount pressure on this particular square, and that might lead to checkmate if not attended to. That is why Charles Lewis found a continuation first with bishop to b7. The concept is if queen comes down to d3, he could play this move or can play this move with the help of the bishop. So the bishop is strong along this diagonal. So in the game, knight to d2 comes up. Charles went on with rook on a to e8, preparing to push this particular pawn. Here, knight comes to e4, threatening to pick this bishop. Bishop to d8, c5 followed. c5 attacks the queen, queen to c6. After pawn to f3, supporting and defending this particular knight and stopping any concept on this long diagonal, it is possible for white to lose guard. Then queen and bishop are ready to take the pawn on g2 to make checkmate. So this seals any form of threat along that diagonal. Bishop to e7 comes up, preparing to take this particular pawn, joining forces with the queen. Alexander find a way to increase defend on the pawn by bringing the rook from a to c1. This is an x3 support in this particular file. So in the game, f5 comes up, attacking the knight, trying to remove the knight from that position so that bishop can take the pawn. What did Alexander do? Alexander decided to throw in a check first with the queen on c4. Queen checks the king. King moves to h8. Here, bishop to a4. Bishop to a4 not only attack the queen but also attack the rook. So queen was saved moving over to h6. Bishop takes this particular rook. In this position, it is very important to make a crucial decision in the middle game that could affect your endgame. Louis Charles saw the need to have pawns almost getting to the highest rank of their journey and decided to take the knight first instead of the bishop. This idea is simply strong. He is creating his armies closer to the end of white's camp, so potentially in the future there might be a queen from one of these pawns. Well, you can have your own idea. You can share in the comment section. However, in this position, Alex decided to play an attacking move, going for almost the same concept. Seeing he has a pass pawn, he wants to push it and create another queen to increase winning chances on the board. He plays c6. There is a trick in this position and Louis Charles found it. There's actually a checkmate in 6 after pawn takes pawn. This is actually insane. Move like this was seen in 1834. Let's find out how. In this position, this bishop was given up to be captured. It was like a bait. If Alexander has accepted taking this bishop, you see, there is a checkmate in 6 that starts with queen check first. In this position, if the king goes to f1, pawn takes with check from the rook and from the pawn. King takes that particular pawn on g2. Rook to f2 check. King move. Then the rook takes the pawn on b2. This opens a discover check to the king. If the king moves, queen check on f3. King moves, then queen to g2 checkmate. So what did white do? Alexander actually played the defensive approach with rook coming to c2. This brings in a concept, a different idea with queen to e3, check first. After the king move, bishop to c8, keeping the bishop safe. Bishop to d7, trying to remove the bishop. Bishop takes, pawn takes, so that the queen can come to the back rank and stir up checkmate ideas. After bishop to d7, Louis decides to play f2. Rook to f1 comes up, stopping the pawn from promoting. d3, attacking the rook. Rook to c3 comes up, pins the pawn to the queen, with the threat of taking the pawn with the queen or the rook. Here, bishop takes on d7. Pawn takes on d7, allowing queen to come down. In this position, after pawn to e4, supporting this pawn here on d3, Alexander decides to play a trick on Charles by giving up the queen. If queen was captured in a hurry, then there can be a pawn takes rook with promotion, or rook takes rook check. Bishop blocks the check. Rook takes the bishop. This is checkmate. How did Louis Charles defend in this position? Here he went on with bishop to d8. After queen goes back, queen to e1. If rook takes, pawn takes, becomes a queen, and this is checkmate. So how did Alexander respond to this? He played rook to c1. Here comes another unexpected move, d2. In this position, if any of the rook takes, pawn takes, this pins this particular rook to the king. So if it takes, then this happens. If the queen's block, then queen takes queen is checkmate. So spotting the threat of checkmate in the back rank, Alexander decided to double up on this particular pawn to take it away, and also create a double attack on this rook if Louis Charles did not see it. However, Louis Charles was very observant to the end of the game by playing rook to g8, keeping the rook safe. Rook to d1, e3 comes up. After queen to c3, then queen takes the rook. After rook takes the queen, pawn to e2. In this position, after this fight, Alexander resigned this game, seeing there's no more hope. Eventually, he's going to lose this game. Thank you for watching this video. Do not forget to like this video and share to your friends. See you in next video.